Welcome to Top Shelf Tuesday, and as you can recognize, Tim Mosso will be my guest tonight. So welcome back, Tim.
Good to be back, Claudio. Thank you.
So for today's show, we'd like to discuss FP Journe, and the reason we'd like to discuss it is because Tim is going to be visiting FP Journe next week as a manufacturer visit. So we thought, what better topic than this wonderful brand?
Okay, so FP Journe is one of the house favorites here. I love it, you love it, Danny loves it, and Danny doesn't love anything. So that's a big deal here. So first and foremost, we're going away for about a week. So we're going to try to front load some of our content. I thought what better way to do it than to talk a little bit about the FP Journe brand, some real landmark watches in the narrative arc of the brand from its origins as FP Journe started as a watch repair specialist in Paris to the present day with models like the Octa Perpetual, one of his latest and greatest. So we're going to start out with a watch that is absolutely iconic of the brand and in the minds of some is one of the twin pillars of the FP Journe catalog. I want to give a quick shout out to Eddie Landsberg and remind you he has a Facebook group for us, which we thank him for. He's also the first in the chat. Edward's joining us from Sweden. I see Don Gizzle from Germany, Thumper JDM, Henri, Emilio. Guys, welcome. We're also going to be answering your questions about Journe and about these watches specifically throughout the broadcast. So the first watch we've got tonight, and I'm happy to say we've got both interesting images and great macro shots, is the original first series FP Journe Tourbillon Remontoir. Now, of course, I have it upside down. Now you have a good view of it. Now this is the Ruthenium series. These were made between 2001 and 2003 at the tail end of production for the first generation Tourbillon. Why is that important? Because the first generation Tourbillon was Journe's first watch built under his own name. Though building watches from scratch for others since the 80s, Journe didn't actually start making watches under his own marquee until 1999, and this watch in 38mm form was the first. Now, the one you see here exhibits many of the characteristics of that first generation Tourbillon Remontoir. The combination of the Remontoir d'égalité, a constant force mechanism, and a tourbillon was a first not just for Journe but for the industry as a whole. Now what makes the Ruthenium particularly special is that it is the only 40mm first generation Journe tourbillon, and let me walk you through some of the features that make the first generation the first generation. The most obvious is the open Remontoir gap in the dial, the perforation in the aperture, demonstrating the constant force mechanism which steps in 1 second increments. Now today that's a solid disc for the seconds. Back then there was the single-sided cock in the earliest iterations flattened. Now this watch has some of the characteristics of the second generation, I should say the Mark II first generation tourbillon and the Mark IV. The Mark IV being the larger print on the dial for the power reserve specifically, as well as the smaller screws, and then the elements that are more evocative of the earlier watches being the aperture and of course the flat Remontoir cock. Now this watch is a part of the Ruthenium series. There were 5 different references. This one possibly the most emblematic of the Journe brand as a whole. Now what you can actually see on the case back is a little sliver cut in the Ruthenium coated brass bridges, and that little cut right there is actually the Remontoir spring itself. Here it's in steel, and the Chronometre Optimum at the end, it's going to be in titanium. All right. So guys, let me try to give you one more last good view of the filigree style tourbillon of this watch, because as much as you can talk tech, this watch is really all about aesthetics. And one of the nice things about the Ruthenium series is that it was made at the very end of the line for the first generation tourbillon, and the finishing was approaching the levels that Journe achieves today. The first ones, especially the subscription pieces, the first 20, looked downright handmade in a charming way, but this is better finished.
Somebody asked if that's a number 99.
This one right here is of the 99. I don't believe it is number, you know what, it is number 99,
Wayne
guys.
Gretzky.
If you want to have the first, we can't help you, but if you want 99, and 11 is my lucky number, so I sympathize. This is in fact number 99 in the series, guys.
Number 99, that's great.
So we have a question coming in about the Journe brand. This is from Tanzu, and he's asking, what is the cheapest FP Journe model? Well, none of them are cheap, but Claudio, what is the entry level to the Journe brand?
I believe sub 20, is that?
Well, Yeah, around 20, you're going to be looking at the Chronometre Bleu. So you're going to be looking around $20,000. You're going to be looking at a tantalum case, twin mainspring barrels, 18-karat rose gold movement, spectacular iridescent lacquered metallic dial. I'm told that I'm going to be able to see the production process when I go to Geneva, but not photograph it. So it's a proprietary secret. And if you want to see the same effect, check out the incredible Only Watch split second that Journe has created for this year using the same dial technique. So Claudio, let me ask you a quick question. Journe has made 38, 40, 42 millimeter cases in its mainstream line. Which one is the purist's choice and why?
I would say the 38 millimeter is the purest choice, just because when you get into 40 millimeters, you always feel that the purists feel like that's the largest that they'll go. Although when looking at the 38 and the 48 millimeter cases that we have here, it's very hard to discern the difference between the two. So, but I would go 38 millimeters.
Now, I would say that's probably the choice as well. Now, 38 millimeters for about 2 years now discontinued in the Journe line. 2015 with the brass movement 38 steel series was the end of the line. So what I really want to do here is give you a look at two versions of the original Chronometre Resonance. Of course, it features the symmetrical dials for the 2 time zones, and if you look at the current version of the watch, the second time zone is 2 concentric discs, one for 24-hour format, one for minutes. Some people feel like it's a watch that looks like it's winking at you. The purists tend to prefer this Series 1 design, but what you're really looking at here isn't just Series 1, but you're looking at Series 1 in 38 millimeters, the discontinued size, and Series 1 in a boutique exclusive variant in 40 millimeters. Now here's the difference. You start to move them apart, it becomes almost impossible to tell. The real reason people prefer the Series 1 is because, well, let's face it, it was the 2001 to 2009 Purists edition, the Master's first version, and it was the follow-up to the Harry Winston Opus 1, which was Journe's, let's call it his coming out party in the world of high horology. The Resonance also featured as the first installment of the Opus series, and if you look at the rear of these two watches, they look much more like the Opus than the current watch does, so very close to the original model. Also more balanced. Let me tell you something about how this watch works. I have deliberately set this one so that the hands aren't blocking the second subdial. Now people wonder, what's the point of a resonance watch if the seconds start unsynchronized? Well, you simply synchronize them using the trigger at 4 o'clock on the dial. Now here's the other thing about this watch. Let me show you the balances. You see how they're in close proximity. Now this is very much like Antit Hanvier's original experiments with pendulums, and then later with desk clock formats. The idea being that if you have a pendulum or a balance operating, Harrison, can we get any closer to it? Maybe I can get closer to you. Okay, bring that into focus. Okay, very cool. Now when you have 2 balances and 2 escapements operating in the correct proximity, the fractional loss of energy emanating from each one begins to synchronize them mutually. Now it takes about 10 minutes from starting the watch for the balances to synchronize to each other. The idea being that deviation in one will be counterbalanced and nullified by the effect of the other. That's why you have that synchronization feature for the seconds hands, so that once the balances synchronize, then you can get the seconds hands into lockstep, whether the 2 time zones are set the same or not. And yes, the watch can display 2 time zones independently. What you'll also see, and I'll indicate as best I can, is that there's actually a pinion and releasing screw right next to each other, so one of the balance cocks can actually be moved as if on a central pivot to change the proximity of the balance wheels to get the proper benefit of the resonance effect. You don't want them to come into contact, and you don't want them to be too far apart, so the watch can be regulated precisely to the extent that no other watch can, because no other watch gives you the ability to vary the distance between 2 proximate balance wheels like this. And you can see this is one of the later Gen 1 resonance watches, because after 2004 all of the movements were 18-karat red gold.
Tim, Clive was just mentioning, and how are you doing, Clive? about the backs of our watches, wouldn't you say that FP Journe has some of the nicest exhibition movements in the industry?
I would say probably most distinctive. That's what I would say for Journe. I would say when you're looking at the back of Journe, you know what you're looking at, and there's a couple of reasons for that. First, it's not about the gold. The gold is cool, and I'll get to that. But what really sets the Journe watches apart is that they're designed with a pocket watch engineer's sensibility. If you look at the back of a pocket watch, and FP Journe started restoring pocket watches in his uncle's boutique in Paris.
Back in the 70s, right?
In the early 70s, before he even went to watch school. He was not great in watch school. He was a self-taught prodigy for the most part. But when you look at a pocket watch, it's like a master class in watchmaking. You can see the barrel, you can see the train, the crown wheel, the ratchet wheel, the click, everything. FP Journe designs the casebacks, and Harrison, why don't we go to a quick close-up here again, because I think the Resonance is the best example of this tonight. When you look at the caseback of a Journe watch, you can get a good sense of the power flow from the barrel all the way to the balance. Now, in some of the watches, for instance, the Chronometre Bleu, some of the Chronometre Souverain series, they have a hidden train. So it's almost as though you can see the huge gulfs between the bridges and the balance cocks and the finishing of the plates beneath. FP Journe does an incredible job, like Lange, of opening the gaps between the different structures of the movement, with the result that you can easily see the depth and you can see the features. And I appreciate that. It's not perhaps the fine finish, the bien facteur that they would call it in Geneva. It's the structure of a Journe caseback that really sets it apart for me. Now, of course, the red gold since 2004 has been very distinctive. Making a movement out of precious metal, especially 18 karat, not the harder and somewhat easier to work 14 karat, is really impressive. That's why you don't see it much. But I would say mostly it's the structure of Journe movements. At the absolute top end, do Lange and Patek have some watches that are maybe better finished in the mainstream? Possibly. And the Journe watches over time have improved, but if you buy at the top of the line something like the Soiree, the Repetition, the Perpetual, the Chronometre Optimum, you get finish that's as good as anything anywhere. At the level of the Chronometre Bleu, you're going to get a beautifully finished movement, but what really sets it apart is the architecture.
Somebody just mentioned Lange right at the second that you mentioned Lange, and we happen to agree. Lange makes some very beautiful movements. So RJ and Jumper, a little special for you next week for our Oktoberfest special. We're going to be showing a couple of Langes, so that's in next week's episode. Today, Jorn.
I can do even better than that, guys. Behind me, you see one of my little friends up there, actually two of them.
Oh, wow.
Zeitwerk in rose and white gold. They're going to be on my Watches live program on my Watch You Want Watch Review channel next at 6:30. I'm doubling up, guys. This is a double feature. You just have to change channels, subscribe to Watch You Want Watch Reviews, and you won't miss it. Okay, guys. Moving on, I want to focus on a watch that's maybe a little bit off the beaten path and kind of showcases the fact that Jorn is a traditionalist, perhaps, in materials and craft, but not necessarily in aesthetics. Now, he said that the first thing he considers when he designs a watch is how it looks, and I thought that was shocking coming from a guy who was really reared working on the backside of the watch. So he's been in the movements, but he's very concerned with the way a watch looks, and the reason for that is you're going to see it every day on your wrist. This is the Octa Zodiac. Now, it's a circumferential zodiac calendar driven by the 5-day automatic Octa movement. You'll note this is the brass Journe era, pre-2004. Now, these were built between 2003 and 2005. The brass movement was built during an era when Journe was making not just far less than the 900 watches the company makes yearly today. They made 913 in 2016. This is back when the company was making half of that. Now, this watch was made in only 150 pieces from 2003 to 2005, and the silver rhodium-coated brass is your cue that you're looking at something truly special in the world of Journe. Rare, older, collectible, and discontinued. That's only half the appeal of this watch, as the Zodiac circumferential ring, the index is at 12, gives you a unique tribute to the stars, as Journe prefers to call it. And the tribute to the stars one that just about anyone can appreciate, whether they are superstitious or not, because at the end of the day, it's simply beautiful, and that justifies Journe's philosophy of designing the look of the watch first. 40 millimeters in platinum, this is an exceptional piece. Considered to be like the fifth Beetle, this is the unofficial 6th edition of the Ruthenium series. Okay, so let's see what we have. I see KWA asking, do we have any brass movements tonight? You asked for it, and you got it, my man. Okay, so what else do we have, guys? Oh, right, we are rolling through. I see Eddie's here, I see Neuro's here, I see JBO has joined us. Guys, welcome, and Clive, as always. Now, let me ask you a quick question. I've often said, Claudio, that the calendar is the most practical complication. Agree, disagree, and how would you rate this particular perpetual calendar?
Well, it's hard to rate this specific perpetual calendar.
Do you agree or disagree that the calendar is?
Absolutely, and last week we were talking about perpetual calendars, and I think that it's for me it's the most important complication that any watch manufacturer can make. This specific model, it's actually a bit unique because you can tell it's an FP Journe, but however, the way that the dial lays and their apertures, it's not a typical FP Journe. So it's a perpetual calendar, but at the same time, when you look at it, you have to almost think twice and say, is this an FP Journe or is it something else?
Yes, exactly. And here's the thing: is it an FP Journe? Absolutely. Those biomorphic hands, bolts, or I should say screws on the dial, the white gold bezel for the center dial. But here's the thing with this watch. Remember, I just showed you the brass movement. Now take a look at the Octa 5-day caliber with a gold set of bridges, plates, and rotors. That's the difference, guys, when you hear about brass and gold Journe. Brass is silver because of the rhodium plating. Now here's the other thing. This watch has a special story behind it for me because I first saw it on the wrist of FP Journe in one of his boutiques in 2015. He was wearing a prototype. Over the years, his field testing has become more elaborate. He wanted to get it right. Now the watch has manifold virtues: 5-day automatic winding movement, rose gold plates and bridges, all adjustments done through the crown. There are no pusher adjusters to mar the case flanks, nothing to break up the profile of the watch, and of course you have a very complete and simple aperture style display with a power reserve for convenience and a nearly hidden leap year cycle indicator at center. That's the genius of Journe. Sometimes less really is more. So the fact that I first saw that watch on the wrist of the man himself is what made it for me. Does FP Journe make a world timer? I see Eddie Landsberg's asking us. FP Journe's travel watch is the Octa UTC. I want to say that came out in 2011. It's an interesting travel time watch that gives you all the world's time zones at a glance, as long as you're willing to enter your reference city into the reference time. Not a world timer, but it does give you an adjustment between daylight savings and standard time. So basically they call it summer or winter time, along with Glasuta, one of the few companies that's creating a travel watch that can adjust for daylight savings. Now finally we come to our last timepiece for the night. Guys, I don't want to say I saved the best for last, but
I think you did, yeah.
This might be my favorite. At the very least,
definitely mine.
It's the Optimum Chronometer. So says who? So says FP Journe. Let me polish it up because frankly it deserves it. This is a watch that came out in 2012. It's FP Journe's idea of an ideal chronometer. And of course FP Journe flouts the convention in Switzerland that you have to pass the COSC test to be called Chronometre. This watch achieves that. It does it with technology. Two things. There is a dual direct impulse escapement, unlubricated, using titanium components, the dream of many dating back to Breguet, realized by FP Journe. It maintains, along with a Remontoir d'égalité. Now you can see that deadbeat second Remontoir d'égalité aperture, just like on the Tourbillon that started the series. The constant force and the dual direct impulse escapement, along with twin mainspring barrels in series, give this watch performance that exceeds the COSC standards. Those three features in tandem, and I mentioned that Jorn features special finishing, a higher degree, more handwork on the flagship pieces. This is an example of that. And you can see it on all aspects of this movement, which includes black polish, mirrored anglage, richly textured Côte de Genève. This is a feast for the eyes as well as the intellect. The Chronometre Optimum, and this is it in its boutique iteration.
So is this one of your favorite pieces, Tim, in the FP Journe collection, or
this might be my favorite piece.
That we have on the tray, or would you say in the whole collection?
I would say in the entire collection.
All right, you heard it here. Tim's favorite piece in the entire FP Journe collection, or at least one of.
Cerebrally satisfying, aesthetically excellent, and our final piece of the night. Guys, I'm not going away, and neither is Claudio. Claudio will be back next week, Top Shelf Tuesday. Remember, 6 p.m. every Tuesday evening. We will also be inaugurating our new set next week, and everyone's going to be part of the rollout. Claudio, what do you have to say to our folks?
Well, I just want to thank you for coming onto the show tonight, and I just wanted to give a little gift back to our viewers who love seeing Tim on every night. So we brought him back, and hopefully we could get him on some more shows on Tuesday nights. But as Tim said, we have a show every night of the week, so please tune in every night. I also want to mention, if you haven't downloaded our Watchbox app yet, you should. If you consider yourself a watch collector aficionado, if you just enjoy reading news or shopping for watches, I would definitely download the app. Next week, I'm going to be doing an Oktoberfest special. There's a story behind that, so we'll get back to the original concept of WWCB, thanks to Clive. And that's basically it. I just wanted to say thanks again, Tim. I wish you a safe journey to Geneva. Lots of fun.
Other channel. And my other channel right next.
That's right.
Stay tuned. Watch You Want Watch Reviews, guys. We're doing watches live immediately after this. We're going to be interactive with more watches. All of these guys are coming back with additional friends from behind me.
I almost just fell. But yeah, so stay tuned in, 6:30, Watches Live, and have a good night, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.